Okay, so we're here with Frankie Malacaria. That's how you say your name, right?
Malacaria.
Damn it, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Malacaria?
To be honest, I'm not even entirely sure myself. Third generation, Italian American.
Where'd your family come from?
Calabria.
No shit.
So,
So
the boot.
my family, my dad's side, my grandmother's maiden name was Magnata, and apparently there's a town there called Magnata, and we've never been to Italy.
Nice.
And my dad was in Italy when he was like 7.
Funny enough, the town my family comes from is called Philadelphia,
No shit.
but with F's instead of PH's. Yeah,
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Wait, what was that? What was that meme? Steven? Remember that one with the dog?
Oh yeah, with the teeth that are all
Steven. You and I think the first time that I met you was at St. Lucy's Church. And I think the commissioners were there to talk to you guys about solitary confinement.
St. Luke's.
St. Luke's, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Am I right in thinking I think that's maybe the first time we interacted? Might have crossed paths
Probably.
earlier than that, but
Yeah, I think that was the first time we had a conversation.
yeah. It was a weird room that night. But tell me about, and we've seen each other at like protests and stuff like that. And I think I was trying to help you EQ the thing the one day. Tell me about give me your story. Like, where did you grow up and what was it like for you growing up?
So I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. We just mentioned Coney Island.
I'm talking about the hot dogs.
I grew up about, 15-minute walk from the boardwalk, Coney Island. I had...
What years were you out there?
So I was born in 92.
Same year my wife was.
I lived there until the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And then I took it.
I was out there until after high school. I went through grade school and everything in public school through New York City. Did a semester at NYU. Got in there with a 66 average.
Oh my
my
God.
junior year.
Your story and my story are overlapping already.
So I was on a probationary status when I was enrolled. And right before finals week, my computer exploded. My hard drive died. Was dual booting Linux and Ubuntu 10 at the time, 10.4 probably, and Windows 7. And Windows didn't like being a secondary operating system on the partition. It blew up my computer, and I lost my English portfolio. I lost a whole bunch of projects that were all getting due. So I basically failed out because of this mishap. Because I got thrown out of school, my dad threw me out of the house, and I had moved up to Scranton, where my mom had moved during my senior year of high school.
So were you but you weren't there's no troublemaking. You just lost your English, your computer took a shit.
Well, I was...
I got in a little bit of trouble when I was in high school.
In high school, I didn't have the best track record. There was I went from a 66 average junior year to 72 average senior year, like my cumulative overall average. So senior year, I really just hit the books, tried to, really apply myself. I went to an accelerated high school that I had to test into. So naturally gifted was always something that was said to me that oh, you're not reaching your full potential. Causes a lot of stress, in young folks. I didn't necessarily respond well to that. So in high school, I was, more social than I probably should have been. I should have focused more on studies than friends. But it was a lack of applying myself more so at the time.
So to relate to that, I got basically the same diagnosis. It's you're not dumb. What are you doing? And I graduated high school with a 64.6. They rounded it up. That's how I got out. And then I took 5 years off because I didn't think that I should go right into college. And I basically those 5 years I joined a band and learned how to drink heavily. and then eventually moved to Florida, and then moved from Florida to California for a couple of years to LA, and then came back here in 2010, got sober.
Nice.
And I haven't had a drink. I drank last week a little bit on the show with Tom.
Yeah, I saw.
But I haven't really had like a drink. I've never been drunk for going on 15 years now, almost 16 years. And I think that was probably that, and quitting drinking and meeting my wife was probably like the two smartest things I've done.
Biggest impacts?
Profound. Well, that, and then I took that high dose of mushrooms, which is really profound too.
Yeah. Can't count that out.
So why did your mom, and whatever you don't want to talk about, you don't have to talk about, but why did your mom choose Scranton?
That's a good question. My stepfather had lived in Scranton for a while. His mother was living up in Honesdale at the time. His sister lives over here in Southside as well. So he had familial connections here. They were having a kid. My sister,
your mom and your stepdad.
Yes.
Okay.
And they didn't want to raise more kids in the city, so they decided to move to Scranton. It's cheaper out here. It's easier to raise a family. Generally, with the costs of everything in New York being so expensive. So they decided to move out here. They were renting a place, and the landlord that was renting it to us, when they eventually passed away, we bought the house from them.
Okay.
So the house that we live in now is directly next door to the house that my family first moved to Scranton to in 2009, I think they moved in. And yeah, when the family passed, the children all had houses. They were all in like their 60s. And they offered it to us, off the market. So we were able to get a really good deal, thankfully.
And then now you have a younger sister? Two.
Yep.
Since mom moved here?
Yep.
How old are they?
15 and 16.
Oh no. That's like the I hate you years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they go to the Scranton?
They were, I think they're still technically in Scranton School District, but they're right now in cyber.
Okay.
In the cyber programs.
Did you think that the public school system kind of sucked when you were in Brooklyn?
Well, I have like a very privileged perspective from the public education system. When I was in kindergarten, you can probably hear I have a speech impediment.
I never noticed.
In kindergarten, it was so bad.
What kind of speech impediment is it?
My R's are really rough for me to speak.
Like raspberry?
Roofs, rabbits.
Really?
Yeah.
I never noticed.
W's often trickle in. And then like CRs are sometimes hard for me, like accuracy.
Or crap.
Well, crap is a little bit easier, I think. But more practice, I guess. The muscle memory is there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was. They wanted to test me in kindergarten, and they had tested me to try to put me in remedial classes because I would have to speak like 3 or 4 times for anyone to understand anything. I, did amazing on the test allegedly, and the accelerated program in my local school wasn't up to my level, so they transferred me to another school for another gifted program. And I had to do like 5 years of speech therapy in elementary school.
So how bad was it? Like you couldn't, no one could understand you.
Yeah. Like I have a bit of a mumble now.
Yeah.
And like it's part of that related. So yeah, a lot of it was like patience and like trying to, repeat myself and make sure that I'm clear. But yeah,
that must have been frustrating as a kid. I don't think people really understand that, like when kids have like dyslexia or like some sort of like how difficult it really is to just like, because communication is one of the most important things, like just to communicate. Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, I have the thoughts there and like I'm trying to make the words and people are generally patient enough to try to listen.
Do you write with a stutter?
No.
Just making sure they could understand.
But yeah, so I did several years of, accelerated program for elementary school. I went to standard middle school, and then I tested into a specialized high school called Brooklyn Tech, and it's like second or third rated high school in New York City. So I had like world-class education. I did like robotics in high school.
No shit.
Yeah, we had like multi-million-dollar facilities. I learned how to do like CNC machining on like milling machines and lathes, and had like access to like a whole bunch of like really great resources through that.
Why is that privileged?
Because not everyone gets that opportunity, you know? Like we should have, access, like looking at like Scranton's public education system is like.
If you saw the podcast last week, apparently all gloves are off on Scranton School District.
Just
so whatever
speak freely,
speak
right?
freely.
It's just over the years, the budget cuts from was Act 47 that we were in, put so many restrictions on what like was deemed necessary for education that
we're not gonna kick you out for doing that.
Good. Hopefully I won't break it.
You won't.
We'll just bill you later.
We don't have arts. We don't have music. We don't have libraries.
No.
All things that I think are like profoundly important to like the well-being and education of children. The education system that as we have it now is just a tool for social reproduction of the labor force. So like,
oh, you see it that way too.
yeah, it's just a way of
Like ring the bell and
Yep.
train yourself
Mhm.
and okay.
Yeah,
All right.
for the most part. Like I don't think we teach enough like critical thinking, analysis of like media analysis.
I don't think we're that far apart, Dan.
I mean,
I've been saying this for years.
we can definitely find we should be able to address the issues that we are facing. It's a question of whether or not we'll have the same solutions.
I think critical thinking definitely. To ask questions, to not take the given answer as the answer, to figure out how that other person came to that conclusion. Like, you heard, if you listened to Borthwick last week, he's like, I'm not an asshole. I just argue to prove your, so you can
I
prove
related.
Yeah.
Coming from an Italian family, my voice can get loud
Lebanese.
sometimes.
Is he Lebanese? Yeah, he's Lebanese.
Yeah, he was Lebanese
right?
and Scottish.
Wow, what a combo.
Yeah.
What a combo. I think public schools are, especially right now, they're not, look, there's good people there. You know what I mean? Like it's not like full of people who don't want children to succeed or don't want them to critically think or get a good education. I always looked at it as outside forces manipulating the curriculum and mismanagement. So like if you have to cut why are you cutting those programs?
So,
what did you do wrong?
This is
along
where I
the
think
path.
we're going to start diverting.
Okay.
I agree with you with the outside forces, but who are those outside forces?
I think, in my opinion, the outside forces are special interest groups, NGOs. I'll give you a perfect example. There's this group called the PSBA. Have you heard of them? The Pennsylvania School Board Association.
Yes.
Okay. So what they do is they advocate to get policies and procedures into public school systems.
Yeah.
Now, where I differ on that is I don't think that outside, so we live in like our little community here, right? However you want to call it. And we're kind of insulated in a way because, it's like Scranton, Lackawanna County, Wilkes-Barre and Luzerne are down. And then like, that's basically it. Like, and then around is like farmland. I don't think that outside people, just like I don't think that I should be able to walk into your parents' home and tell them what to do. I think you and your family know best how to run your family. I don't think it should be manipulated by outside people through coercion, grant money. You have to put this curriculum in because we'll give you the grant money because you guys misspent the last 7 years and you need the money. So here's the strings attached to it. Like that's my point of view is like, keep it local. Don't let other people, other groups or whatever from outside who don't live here, who don't understand the people, who don't know the traditions or the culture. Because it is, I mean, Irish, Italian, Polish, German, and now all these other different types of people are coming here, which is great. But I don't want
But
other
you've also
people.
just described like a huge portion of like the Midwest, from like, New England all the way to, Idaho.
Yeah, so we shouldn't.
General.
But then we could. Then I guess we can all figure it out. We can figure it out on our own then.
Well,
do you think that outside forces, and I don't mean forces like, insurgencies, but outside influence?
Are you familiar with the concept of manufacturing consent?
Isn't that where like you start like you start dripping out these things and then eventually like people agree to it?
No, not necessarily. So there's a book written by Noam Chomsky, and I think Edmund Burke is the co-author on that one. Chomsky only writes with co-authors, basically. He does like the research, and then other people will like publish it into like a book for the most part. But manufacturing consent is basically this idea that the reason that like mainstream media has like a certain perspective is that not because they don't think that they're telling you a lie. They don't think that they're spinning you a narrative. In their perspective, news agencies will only hire people that align with a certain set of values.
Okay.
So like as long as like those, values are aligning, between the agency and the employees, then, there is no perceived bias that is happening, but there is like the ingrained ones that are already there in the institutions.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's like if everybody's Catholic.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you're trying to, push for like Catholic doctrine or whatever.
Maybe not even on purpose. It just happens.
It's your ingrained, unseen biases.
Yeah.
So I think that something similar can be applied with, the PSBA, where if someone is already aligned with those values, and, I very much know what you're alluding to here because, I'm in the know, I think, on this.
No, I'm not alluding to that.
No,
not specifically. No.
So
It's always bothered me.
But like,
regardless.
But even in that case, so like, if these people, if the employee aligns, with the
like the mission,
right? Exactly, and they, got elected running on very similar, mission and policy positions.
I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm not talking about specific elected people. I'm talking about it as an organization. I personally don't, because they're all over the state, right? So there are ambassadors, there are this, there are that, but their function is to implement policy, right? And to find ways to get in there to influence and to influence school districts, to implement policy.
It's a lobbying organization.
Yeah. I don't have the people in it. I'm not speaking about them. I'm talking about the mission of just PSBA in general. I have issues with like how does a school district run for over 100 years and now all of a sudden it needs new policies? I
mean, we should, outlaw lobbying, outlaw,
I'm with you.
Money and
I'm
elections.
With you. I'm with you.
We got some simple answers for these.
I'm with you.
So I would like to offer my idea of like what these special interests are. And for the most part, I think that the special interests
you can pull that closer to you.
Sorry.
Oh, you can lean back, just pull it with you.
Yeah, you can just pull it with you. And then Dan, make sure he's in focus.
How's this?
Yeah.
So with
man, you were getting all lean back now.
Yeah, I was trying to tell you to frame it.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Get comfortable.
So with special interests, I think that the main ones that are having the biggest effect on the school curriculums are corporations. What is it? McGrath Hill?
McGraw-Hill.
McGraw-Hill.
The books?
That like has been, implanted and in, like, I don't know the last time that I looked up this, company.
Yeah.
But like from seeing it all throughout education, they do all the publishing. So like.
And they write them, if I'm not mistaken.
So that brings us back to the manufacturing consent idea, So they're employing people that are having the same biases as they are, as like a for-profit corporation that is making money on the education system that is supposed to be a public good.
It's supposed to be.
Right.
So who should write the books then? I'm with you. They shouldn't be doing that.
Right. So I think that we need to like go in and like
should be local.
We should break up the monopolies of that, like of these like publishers, like everything, in this stage, 150 years after capitalism first started booming, we're living in an age, that is entirely ruled by monopolistic forces. Anywhere we turn, almost every sector is being gobbled up. And, if it's not a straight monopoly, it's either, a duopoly, or there might be three main forces in the market, or what is considered the market. But that's not actually a market when, only a couple of, providers.
A market is in choices of three.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So even in like traditional capitalist sense, like we are moving further and further from like markets. There's a Greek finance minister, former Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, and he thinks.
Whoa!
I had to laugh. I'm sorry. It came, I didn't expect
Wild
it.
name. Wild name.
I didn't expect it, but thank you.
Yeah. Yanis Varoufakis.
Varoufakis?
Varoufakis.
I will never forget that name.
Faokis. Fakis.
I spell it differently, but it's funnier that way.
But he's a leftist, and he started seeing how we no longer have markets. So his ideas that have been picking up a little bit more steam recently is that we are no longer living in capitalism, but what he calls techno-feudalism. And that's where
okay, I get it.
Corporations are no longer looking for profits in the traditional sense, where you make money by selling your goods for more money than it costs to make them. Where you're extracting profit out of having employees, and you're paying employees less than the overall value that they're putting in. And this new system, techno-feudalism, it's more of a rent seeking. So it goes back to like feudal times where you would have to pay rent on everything. And this is like how the subscription model basically has taken over. Like everything's a subscription now.
Yeah.
Like even the, computer programs,
100%.
software as a service.
Yep.
So the market's no longer really a market. When you're going to go buy something online, 9 times out of 10, that's through, Amazon, which wants to take over the market. Because Amazon, most things that are sold on there aren't through Amazon themselves, but through other sellers. And how they make money is by charging rent on the shops that sell through Amazon, which could be as high as 45% of the sale.
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah, Amazon really fucks its sellers.
I didn't know that.
They're like a virtual flea market.
I mean, in a way, but
they want to be the market, rather than being a participant in the market.
Well, they want to be the only mall that you can buy these things at.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right? Because it's like it's like the only way for you to get this stuff is to enter this compound.
Yeah.
If you want fucking Earl Grey tea.
This walled garden.
Yes. And I think, it wasn't like, if you go back, do you think it was always like that? Because I don't think it was always like that, especially in America. Like there was a moment where it turned into this, like, instead of having like 40 car manufacturers and now it's like 4.
Well, financialization was like a big thing.
Financialization?
Yeah, financialization of markets. So like selling on options to trade on futures, and the subprime mortgage crisis.
Are you talking like 2008?
2008 really did like fold up a lot of the car manufacturers.
See, I would have thought like NAFTA in like 94 or. Well,
so GM had this like super great idea that they were going to focus.
And they were Flint, Michigan, weren't they? Wasn't GM up in Flint, Michigan?
Yes.
Yeah.
They decided, along with a whole bunch of other companies in the 2000s, that they could make more money by basically operating as a bank with a side business of cars. So they were able to like use all of their like assets as like leverage, and then started to like trade on this. And there was like a GM like bank arm basically that was heavily involved with investments. And 2008 came and it totally fucked up like a bunch of like huge corporations like GE basically operated the same way.
Yeah, we bailed out the banks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of like other companies were then also operating as banks. So when we bailed out the banks, we also bailed out the motor companies. We bailed out General Electric.
I remember this.
Because they were doing very similar things to the banks. So that's what I mean by the financialization of our markets, where
was that the start of Occupy Wall Street right around that time?
2011 was Occupy in a response to that.
Yes. Okay. And then if I'm not mistaken, just to bring it forward real quick, all the GameStop stuff. Remember the GameStop stuff over the last few years?
Yep.
That was started by a dude whose like whole family was decimated by that 2008.
Yeah, Roaring Kitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he ended up making out like a bandit.
No shit. He's got like $100 million or more now. It's crazy.
And just disappears off the internet.
All right. So I have all these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're just like topics. I don't know if I want to ask like the specific ones. This is a good one. Scranton's got a hardworking blue collar vibe. How did living here or somewhere mold your perspective on politics and community?
So, as I mentioned, I moved out here when I, was almost fresh out of college, of high school. I got my
Brilliant computer fuck up.
yeah, yep, that led me down this path that I'm on today.
It's weird.
Yep. And, at the time, I spent a lot of time despairing over it, but, I'm grateful to where I am today.
I'm grateful you're here too, man.
But remind me one more time, what was that?
Scranton's got a hardworking blue collar vibe.
Yes.
How did living here or somewhere mold your perspective on politics and community?
So
don't be afraid of that microphone, brother.
Yeah. One of my first jobs that I had was I worked at a car wash. I was living in Northside, and I was
Like North Scranton?
Yep.
Okay.
Over on Putnam Street, right by the football field there.
Okay.
And I needed a job. Had little work experience at that time. I had some, but not much. And I got a job working at a car wash on Kaiser Avenue. And this place, the owner paid me $5 an hour to hand wash and detail cars.
Okay.
And yet this guy was getting paid, upwards of $150 for the detail. So that really radicalized me. That was like, my first work experience that was like, workers are getting fucked. Blue collar jobs, are getting fucked by, the people that own things.
Can I push back on this a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Did he say, hey, I will offer you a job for X amount of dollars?
And then lowballed me after the agreement was $7 an hour plus tips.
Oh, you should have walked the fuck out then.
So I did 4 shifts, and then when I got paid, at the end of the week, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no,
so wait,
I'm gone.
You agreed to a number and then he reneged on the number?
Yeah, but this isn't like the last time that would happen to me either.
No. I'm not saying, but that's what that guy did. He made a deal. You agreed to a deal, and then he reneged on the deal.
Yep, and that has been a recurring, experience that I've, had working for people. That they'll be like, yeah, hey, I'll pay you this much to do the work, and then at the end of the day, like, oh, I wasn't able to get all that money for you, or come up with some excuse like, oh, you're not working as fast as I thought you would, so I'm only going to be paying you $5 now.
Yo, people are taking advantage of you.
Yeah, people really like to take advantage of like folks. Yeah, it's fucked up.
We'd have that with the band though too.
Yeah, we would do that with our band when we were in a band. Remember that one gig that we played? The Bypass.
Oh yeah, the Bypass Lounge.
We booked the night. We were taking the door. There was like 15 people there.
Yeah,
$5 a head, and he gave us $15 for
Nice.
5 guys. And I'm like, this is not. And that's when like we started becoming like, wait, what is this? We would just expect like money, and now this guy's just screwing us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that all mean? I don't think all. I know a lot of business guys. They would never do that. They would never do that to somebody.
No. I've worked
fair day's
for
work,
people-
fair day's wage.
Yeah, and I've worked for like other folks, that like have been, much more reasonable, much more accommodating, fair, But
Do you think you just ran into some assholes?
it happens more often. Like for it to happen once, sure, it's a fluke. But for it to have happened, on multiple occurrences, it's a way of doing business.
Like you see a pattern.
Yes. Yeah. Even in my own just anecdotal like experience, like I
Were most of these manual labor stuff?
Yeah. Bar back.
Did they even screw you in the bar backs?
Yep.
You never worked for. My wife's a bartender. She wouldn't screw you on money.
Yeah, but
You know?
it was all the manager, you know.
So that was like that. So your blue collar, that was what, I don't know, radicalized you, maybe pissed you off.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Like something's wrong here.
it was the experience of, you know, and then so I moved back to New York in 2013.
Okay.
And worked for a few different things before landing in the pizza business. And I spent
Your pizza's the bomb.
I spent several years learning to make pizza and then making pizza in New York before. So 2019, I was making $15 an hour making pizza in New York, plus tips, a couple extra bucks a night, maybe $20 extra a night in tips. And at the time, you know, I was barely able to survive. My landlady had passed away, and we were paying $14.50 for a 2-bedroom in New York at the time, which was a great deal. But
$14.50 is still a lot of money.
yeah, a lot of money. But
Yeah.
for at the time, for what it was a great deal. But it was still too expensive. And then
Were you guys splitting it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. 2 ways. We were split two bedrooms, which was still a significant amount of money. So I felt like I didn't want to keep doing the rat race. I know that, you know, I got my first apartment in Scranton. I was paying $400 for a 2-bedroom. You can't get a room. You can't get a room for that cost now. Back in 2011.
You can't get a room at the Hilton for that now.
Yeah. So
Was it decent? Was it like a decent neighborhood? It was decent apartment?
in 2011.
Yeah. No. The 450.
Oh yeah, the 1450.
Yeah. No. The one you got in Scranton for like 450.
Yeah, that was not super great.
Okay.
You know, I was
It makes me wonder what the 450 in New York goes for.
yeah. I don't even know if you can get a closet for $450 a month. In New York.
Dude, I've seen some of the things that people pay for
like
there, and
literally
I was
like a broom closet. I don't even know that.
it's like, you don't- why would you? There's no place to poop. Why would you? Why would you even do that? You got a communal pooping.
So that's when I spent 6 months in Binghamton before moving back to Scranton in 2019. And I moved here February 2nd of 2020, the Saturday before the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And by the Super Bowl Sunday, I was already working at Basilico's.
They got good pizza.
Yeah. So I worked over there for about a year, and then I worked at Grande Pizza, and then
Oh, you were there. So beginning of 2020, lockdown start like a month later.
Yep. I
Okay.
had just moved here, and like 6 weeks later, lockdown starts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wait. What day did you move here?
February 2nd,
Okay, that's really close to
2020.
I got a better one for you. My giant mushroom dose was 022220, February 22nd.
Nice.
So
So
yeah,
what's,
nobody writes the date 0.
what's that? What's that back and forth?
What?
Palindrome.
Palindrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we
I
learned
watched
that
last
last week.
episode.
I already forgot about it. That's and then so like it seems like right around there, you and I both went and I guess you took a left turn and I took a right turn.
Yeah, it was January 6th. I was making pizza.
Well, that's
Grande
2021.
Pizza. Yeah, 2021 was like.
But how did you feel about like the lockdowns and everything? Like forget January 6th for now. Like what was your headspace when it was like, oh hey,
I like
we're gonna start violating all your rights to shut you down? Because that's what broke me. Where I was like, no one has a right to shut down a business and have it, how people make money.
coming straight from New York. You know, I definitely saw like the need.
Was it already starting in New York?
Yeah, well,
You were in Binghamton.
I knew somebody from like a local restaurant whose wife had passed away in like February of that year in Scranton
Okay.
of COVID, before like we knew what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
Before it was like confirmed cases like locally.
I'm convinced quite a few people I know in December of 2019 and January of 2020 had it.
Very could have.
I had it then.
You had it?
Yeah, because I had it before it was a thing.
Oh. Like before NSYNC was cool?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I'm the hipster of COVID.
So I, being like, I straddle the line between introvert and extrovert.
Okay.
So personally, I was able to, you know, not worry too much about, you know, being able to like go out and socialize, personally, I was new to an area, so it like sucked not being able, like that pause on like going out and like making connections and meeting folks and like starting to like integrate into the community was kind of pushed back a little bit, which didn't start, until a year later in 2021 for me. So like I understand like the hardships that like it did put people through, but I think I've seeing like Cuomo's response in New York and like how we didn't lock down our nursing homes, which caused like this huge spike of deaths very early on. In the
I
pandemic.
thought he locked them down.
No, he didn't lock them down was the fucking issue.
So you thought he should have locked them down?
He should have locked them down earlier when like we were first getting word about it. I think that if we would have done a lockdown a little bit sooner, it probably could have been 2 weeks. We could have like stopped the curve, and like prevented like the whole fucking 2 years that followed.
So would you agree that the elderly were probably the most at risk?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can definitely say that now at like this point, we know that the elderly were the most at risk.
Like by far.
Yeah.
Isn't that generally just like a common sense thing though?
Flu season.
It depends because aren't there some like illnesses that like are more deadly for children than they are for adults?
No, so I looked up COVID and the flu with children.
COVID and flu, are more for like elderly folks. Are more dangerous.
So I was a big advocate about not closing the schools down. And one of the biggest reasons why was because even till today, it was like 6 kids in 100,000 could possibly die from COVID, but 36 kids in 100,000 year over year were at risk for dying from the flu.
But the bigger issue there wasn't just the children, but that the children go home to like multi-generational families and could have potentially been exposed to COVID, and now grandma's sick and dying.
What do you know about like what they knew at that time? Because I'm not trying to get you on anything.
No,
but we've learned a lot since. All of a sudden, it seemed like the thing that made COVID go away was Putin invaded Ukraine.
Well, I don't.
It was like the next day, like COVID wasn't a thing anymore.
I have friends that are like still heavily involved in like organizing around COVID, like still like providing masks if like organizations like would like them to like, just to be safe. How to make like a homemade like air filter that can like help filter that particulate size, and that kind of stuff. So like, not everybody ignored it. And I think like a big issue that like a lot of us like misinterpret is, going back to the manufactured consent, like when who's not talking about it, is it no longer an issue? Is it when like it's no longer being spouted on mainstream media? Because I'm sure that like in the background, there are still like a whole bunch of people working on stuff. Like in the example of
they have a whole reel ready just to shoot out there when they need to.
People what?
A reel.
What do you mean?
Like a news reel.
Oh. All right, keep going.
Yeah. To this distraction. Yeah. I get your point. For manufacturing consent, COVID.
You said just because they stopped talking about it didn't mean people were still not out there doing stuff.
There are still people like in the background doing work. And with what we're seeing now, like the dismantling of like HHS, like Robert Kennedy's like, oh, I didn't even know that like they cut funding to this. He's coming out and like saying that like, oh no, that program actually needs to be refunded, and like it's because of the Doge cuts that like he isn't aware of like what Elon is. But I want to with COVID.
Let's stick with back there.
So with long COVID was one
before we go after Robert Kennedy.
Long COVID was one of the, and I wasn't even going after Kennedy there, but Musk. But for long COVID, a lot of that funding has been cut. And for example, it takes, I don't even know how long for chickenpox to develop in the shingles. We have like precedent and understanding that like viruses can like turn into a different disease than the initial disease that it had later down the line. So for us to have this new disease of COVID, this new infection, to not try to track the long-term effects that this disease can have on the human body, and to like start cutting down funding for that, I think is super dangerous.
Do you think?
Like wherever it came from, if it came from a lab, if it came from
Do
the
you
wet
think it
market,
might have?
I think it might have, but I like to follow Occam's razor most often.
What the most the easiest answer is usually the most likely.
Yep. And
So
like,
you think it's more
don't
likely that a
attribute to
pangolin?
incompetence or maliciousness, what you can contribute to,
I'm not. I don't think I've ever proclaimed that like it's 12 monkeys and somebody did it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But I firmly believe that it was gain of function research, and I firmly believe that we had our hands in it. The United States, I mean, I firmly believe that the NIH had its hands in it, and Fauci, and he knew about it. And then when they found out it got out, because Frankie, in all honesty, when the first 2 weeks of COVID, I was terrified, right? Like I had friends who were microwaving their mail, which is crazy. And then what you do with somebody like me now, I got about 10 years on you. So I grew up in the early 90s. We watched Unsolved Mysteries. JFK was a fucking movie that I watched when I was 13, and I was like, wait, somebody killed the president, and no one knows who it is, and they think it's this guy, but no one else thinks it's this guy. So, and I couldn't make money. I couldn't run my business. I couldn't, my family made a decision really early on that it was like, okay, are we not going to see each other forever? And we were like, nah, we're going to take our chances. And then what I started to do was you make somebody like me, who's always curious, who's always been curious. I want to know why. Like, why is the sky blue? Oh, why do ducks quack, not have an echo? I'm really curious about shit like that. So I started looking at the data every day. I wasn't watching the news. I turned the news off. And I start looking at the data. And I'm looking at it going like, okay, so the infection rate of this amongst age groups, right? And I start looking at the age groups, and I'm looking at my age group, and I'm like, I am getting older. Should I be concerned? And like my age group's chances of survival were like more than a hike. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, well, why am I losing my shit over this? Like there's these things that I do every day that I'm not going to die for. Like, why am I being so afraid about this? And then I looked at the elderly side of it. And I had friends that worked in nursing homes and nurses and doctors. And I even once talked to the president of a hospital around here about what was going on. And they all told me things that you wouldn't hear on the news, and you would have been afraid to have said if you were out in public. And all those things today are now true. And I think I don't know why COVID, the reaction to it was the way it was, but I think it was a severe overreaction. And I don't know whether it was to get Trump. Now, at the time, I hated Trump. At the time, I hated Donald Trump. Couldn't have a damn thing to do with him. Thought he was the devil incarnate. But then I started to realize things just aren't adding up about what we're being told. And I'm in the media. I should be smarter. I should know whether or not, consent? What's that thing?
Manufacturing consent.
I should know that if somebody's manufacturing consent against me. So what I started to do is I started to actually read the studies. So they said this study came out and did this, and I looked at it and I'm like, okay, does it hold water? This doesn't hold water. There's scientists all over the world saying other things. Why are they saying other things? Are the people in Europe different than the people in South America, different than the people in North America? They're not. And I just started to go, okay, something's wrong. Now, I don't expect you to believe that, but him, me, like a whole bunch of people were just like, yeah, something's messed up. And we'd all like share stories and be like, hey, do you know about this? And like, no, I don't know about that. I'm going to look into this, whatever this is.
Who was the president during the shutdown?
Trump never shut anything down. That's a big misconception. He left it up to the states.
Right.
The states had, because according to the Constitution, they have the states' rights. And he didn't want the federal government to supersede states' rights.
And so like another big like confusion around this for me is like, I've heard these arguments,
I'm sure you think I'm a loon about this, but
I mean, we're entitled to our opinions.
Sure.
But But all I know is that I am not a molecular biologist. Like I
Sure.
do not have the experience necessary to say whether or not it's like the genetic sequence or the RNA sequence of COVID-19 is similar to what you would find in gain of function research, or if it's, similar to what you would find in evolutionary biology.
Right.
Like, I don't know,
So I wanted to listen to molecular biologists. That's what I listened to.
But then you'll get some folks on some side, and then so like Joe Rogan, I thought was super interesting because he had that guy on very early on, very early
Which
on,
one?
the beginning of COVID, like the first week of like
Brett Weinstein?
No.
Peter Hotez?
He ended up like they split after like all the tension of COVID started heating up because
He didn't do in studio. Was that what it was?
Right.
That it?
Yes.
Who was it? I forget who
I
it
don't
was.
remember his name, but he started getting like a lot of shit from the right wing after certain sentiments started politicizing, and there was a right wing perspective and a left wing perspective, and then it was folks started attacking that guy, but with a big confusion for me was with like how everything's been politicized is Donald Trump funded Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah.
He funded the vaccine research, and he was the reason that the vaccine was able to get released so quickly.
It should have never been.
I know
Like
a lot of folks like take that perspective, but like it was done even under like this is one of the few things that I will give Trump for his first.
But you know how many people I know that
You know?
were like, if Trump's doing the vaccine, I'm never fucking taking it. I will never take a Trump
I know,
vaccine.
and I told those people they were fucking ridiculous, But
then what happened? They went and
then
did
it flipped. Yeah, exactly.
But what was the flip?
The people that were saying I would never take the vaccine are the people that are more likely to take vaccine.
But why? But like the ones who were like, I'm not against. I will never take a Trump vaccine. Right. The moment the election happened. All right, we're in, because if you remember, the election happened in November of 2020, but Biden assumes office in January 21. Like the day after the election, it was announced that they had the vaccine, and I believe they started rolling it out in the first or second week of December to like the elderly populations, and for some reason, smokers. Do you remember that? One of the groups they were like smokers, and I'm like, this doesn't seem like a group to give it to, like smokers. But so
high risk.
I think all people on the right see that as a blind spot for Trump, and I think they don't trust me, man. I've been around. I'm around Trump people a lot. I'm around Kennedy Democrats a lot. I'm around Socialist every now and again. They will hold him to the fire for that. They will hold him to the fire for Operation Warp Speed and all the bullshit that went along with it, because it's a very scary thing to have a new product out there and then basically have the entire population be like the first ones to get it.
Yeah. And like, I see that, and like my big confusion is like, why is that the thing you'll hold him accountable for? Can I tell you something that really surprised me? So I didn't go towards Trump. The Democratic Party, for me, I was like, you are not the people that I grew up with. Like, I grew up with like, I voted for, I would have voted for Michael. I remember Michael Dukakis in 1988 riding the tank, running against George Bush. I never liked George Bush Sr. I loved Bill Clinton. Who I think killed JFK.
He was involved. He's the number 2 guy at the CIA. Yeah. How do you not fucking...
And he was in Dallas that day.
Yeah, weird, ain't it?
Yeah.
And Woody Harrelson's dad. Woody Harrelson's dad was there. Did you know that day?
Know that, no.
There's a picture of him in Dealey Plaza. He's one of the 3 hobos. It's Woody Harrelson's dad.
Wow.
I liked Clinton. George W. Bush got elected. I fucking hated him. But on 9/11, John Kerry, he's kind of like a wall that's the paint is drying on, But who's his wife?
I don't even know.
Teresa Heinz of the Heinz ketchup empire.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he's a fucking loon. George Bush, although I will say that for one moment on 9/11, I liked George Bush. And it was like a day after or the second day after where I was like, I thought it was a unifying moment for the country. But then now it's like, maybe they were part of 9/11. I have no idea now. Yeah. But it was like,
get us into wars that spend trillions of dollars
that will never end. Yeah. And we're killing innocent people.
No. Mission was accomplished. Don't you remember?
Yeah, when he wore his tight bulge, fucking talk about bad PR moves. I didn't like Bush. Voted for Obama. Voted for Hillary in 2016.
I didn't.
Well, my mom didn't either. She's like, she's a monster. And I'm like, no, she's not.
In 2016,
who'd you vote for?
Jill Stein.
I would have voted for Bernie if they didn't fuck Bernie over.
Yeah, I was so excited to vote for Bernie in the primaries. I was purged from the primaries.
From the rolls?
I was purged from the rolls during the 2016 primaries.
How'd you get purged from the rolls?
They purged 250,000 people from the voter rolls
in PA,
in New York, in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, 250,000 people were purged from the rolls for the primary.
Yeah, but you're legitimate voters.
Yeah.
Who did that?
I forget the exact details of it. You know, it was nearly 10 years ago now. But
she was also the senator of New York.
Yes. Yeah. So it was super disheartening. Being disenfranchised, not being able to vote for.
That's criminal. Candidate. That's not even disheartening. That's like, no, fuck you. You took away my right to vote.
Yeah, disenfranchised. That's what that word means.
Yeah, but I think I would be angrier than that. Yeah. I would be angrier than disenfranchised. I'd be fucking pissed off to not allow you the opportunity to vote for who you thought who should be your candidate.
Yep. Yeah. So.
And then they screwed him in the convention.
Yep. And so I had to re-register to be able to vote, but it was by that point it was too late to vote for the primary. So
that seems like a scummy political move that somebody did, and it's not somebody; it's a group.
Yeah,
it's organized people.
Yep, exactly. And it was happening like multiple places,
like
across
judges
the country.
And fucking like district attorneys and from the state down were involved with that.
Yep,
that's why there's no like single boogeyman. It's like all these. It's what would you call it? What did George Carlin call it?
It's a big club, and you were in it.
No. There's a better. He's like it was on Politically Incorrect, but it's a famous thing where he's like when interests align, like there is no parties. Like you have no control when interests align. Like there is nothing for the people.
Yep.
When interests align, and it's both parties. So you hear my side will talk about something called like the uniparty, right?
Yeah.
And that's what that means. It means like Democrat, Republican, interests align. They want to do the thing that'll either enrich them or enrich their friends.
When do you think it started?
When do I think it started? Like my funny answer or my real answer?
Let's hear the funny one first.
I think the funny one was July 5th, 1776.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, is this it? Can we watch it?
I don't know. Let me see.
Well, turn the volume down a little bit.
Yeah, I had to mute that there.
I think probably November 22nd, 1963.
The assassination of JFK?
There's a lot of people that believe that the federal government had their hand in assassinating the president of the United States. And once the bureaucracy or the deep state or whatever the hell you want to call them can do that, you don't have a country for the people, by the people anymore. And I think I grew up in this area. A lot of people were like Kennedy Democrats, right?
Yeah, they still hang his picture in bars.
They love John F. Kennedy, right? He wasn't a saint, None of the Kennedys were saints, but they also weren't like the devil either.
They were criminals. They were
the bootleggers.
The bootleggers, yeah.
I don't really care.
During Prohibition,
I don't really like. They should have never. That went well.
Yeah.
Prohibition went real well.
Yeah, but
it led to more suffering,
and it lended to funding of organized crime.
Sure. Do you know what I say the difference between the mafia and the government is? Mafia likes clean streets. It's not, I think it was at that moment that everything went weird. And I don't think that we have a representative government anymore. I think after that happened, it allowed bad actors to come in and either financially gain or Nancy Pelosi shouldn't have $200 million.
No,
Mitch
absolutely not.
McConnell shouldn't have $200 million.
And Rob Bresnahan shouldn't be trading stocks either.
I don't know about this. I can't talk about it. I like Rob very much. It doesn't seem like something he'd do.
That's public record, though.
But, well, I mean, look, I want to ask him about it,
Sure.
but I don't know the extent of it. But I think what everybody needs to do, especially with people like, let's skip to Rob for a second. I met Rob maybe like 2.5 years ago. He would come to events like nobody would be there, right? He would have these events, nobody would be there. I ended up having and because no one was there, I could have a conversation like I'm having with you, with Rob, right? So I got to know Rob a little bit, and I think he's a pretty sincere dude. I think he's pretty on the level. I think what happens is that when you get to a position like that and certain people are not happy with you being in that position, they start to espouse things that are like nuggets of truth, but it chums the water enough. And then that what's the saying that the lie goes around the world 3 times before
the truth can put it on his pants.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's about Rob. That's what I learned during COVID was don't jump the gun. If somebody says that Trump's putting babies on spikes, let's make sure that we know that he's doing that because it's pragmatic. I don't want to be the guy. Nothing makes me feel worse than like on social, if I put something out and it's like, oh fuck, it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I put out something that was wrong.
I've spread the misinformation.
Or dis or mal.
Right.
Believe it or not, lying
Can
is legal.
information be bad though?
Of course it can.
Malinformation?
Malinformation is information that is true but is inconvenient.
Okay.
That's what malinformation is.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing then.
Well, if it's I really believe in truth and hope, right? I think those are the two things that are going to bring people together, right?
Okay.
I'm going to tell you the truth because I care about you. I'm not going to tell you the truth because I want to hurt you, and that it's not the end of the world because I told you this truth. We need to come together. That's my whole message all the time is tell the truth no matter how bad it hurts, even for me. If it's something about me that's truthful, I have to say it. I'm a terrible liar. Dan will admit that I'm a pretty rotten liar.
Yeah.
And so I just don't do it.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
But to give
And
a
then you
little
have to
bit
keep
of
track
hope.
of them.
Yeah, I'm too lazy.
Yeah.
I'm too fucking lazy to lie. Yeah. I'm honest because I'm lazy.
I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, Dan's a piece of shit. So I think that you agree. I think that you and I could agree that there's a lot of manipulation that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I have
just in general.
I have a very loose definition of propaganda because of that. I think propaganda is just as distributing political ideas.
What a political idea can be propaganda?
No. Propaganda is the act of disseminating political ideas.
Okay.
So I use I consider myself a propagandist. When I'm trying to teach people about a political idea or something that
are you trying to make
them,
are you trying to make them come to that conclusion, or are you?
I just have a very a neutral definition of propaganda. I don't think of it as a bad word.
Oh, I think of it as a terrible word.
No, I think it's just a way of trying to spread a political idea that specifically has to be political.
So, well, no, not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's always political. Propaganda can only be political.
It's political messaging.
But you can't have medical propaganda. You can't have sports propaganda. You can't have don't you think that some of that could fall into there? Maybe your definition of it doesn't. You don't include those things.
No, so
everything else is just a lie.
Propaganda isn't necessarily a lie either.
No, not necessarily.
So that's what that's why I think of it as a more neutral term.
So what would it be for for somebody like me? What would be equatable to your version of propaganda?
We want you to join the U.S. Army. That's that classic piece of American propaganda. And then
but it's not telling you anything. It's just saying, we'd like you.
Well, we want you to join the military. And then there's what are the reasons that you know, the
Well,
US
because we want to
government
use you for chum.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
like there's like political, you know, purpose behind that messaging.
Well, if we had critical thinking, then most people would be like, what do they mean by they want me?
Yeah.
Where does this lead to?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of something called the Smith-Mundt Act?
No. Frank.
So you can look this up. In 1948, I believe, it was so Nazi Germany happens, right? And then they have something called the Nuremberg trials,
Yeah.
right? And it's where they asked,
where they let off basically all the Nazis
like most of them went to South America, or they ended up running our space
in
program.
West Germany. Yeah. The head of NATO.
They had a NASA.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might find out pretty soon that actually Adolf Hitler escaped to Argentina and lived for like 10, 15 more years. That might be a there's talk of that being real.
I've heard the conspiracy.
So
I've heard that my whole life.
Well, everything's a conspiracy until it's not. So in the Nuremberg codes, when they asked Goebbels, they said, because I've always been fascinated with World War II, how did they convince an entire people to do that? Right? And when they asked Goebbels, they said, how'd you do it? He goes, it's very easy. It's fear.
Mm-hmm.
We tell you the thing that you're afraid of, and that we're the only ones that can save you from it. Right?
Like illegal immigrants.
Well, we'll get to that. So what happened was the United States passed this thing, I believe it was in 1948, called the Smith-Mundt Act, which made it basically illegal to propagandize the people of the United States.
Okay.
So now
I think I have heard of this.
So now I look at
it's like part of the McCarthyist anti-communist laws.
maybe
Yeah.
was that 1948? Is that the Smith-Mundt Act?
Definitely the error.
The domestic dissemination of information material about the United States intended primarily for foreign audiences and for other purposes. Yeah, I'm not reading all that. So the Smith-Mundt Act, the core of it was you can't propagandize. The United States as a policy would not do that. And then in 2012, it got reversed. And then you see like all of this crazy shit start to happen where it's all like everybody's racist and misogynist and all that. Like you could literally go to Google and type in all these words and you see 2012 and there's just a dramatic spike up for uses of these words, whether it's in publications, websites, TV news, cable news. It's just a like you look at it and you go, that's a signal. I don't know what that signal means, but I should go back and look at the source of that signal.
You know, causation and correlation, you know, like 2012, I'm sure most things are going to see a big tick up on Google Trends solely for the fact that like we started getting these in our pockets. Like,
no, I mean, those
very,
are 2000. I think the first iPhone was 2006,
2007.
2007.
So then like, it takes a couple of years to catch on. But by the time 2012, like there's also studies coming out that like intelligence, I don't know how they measure it, starts dipping.
Like human intelligence?
Starts dipping after 2012.
Well, I believe that.
And that's like, the same time that like these are like in almost everybody's pocket.
But is that all
intelligence?
intelligence?
It's America.
American intelligence.
Yeah. Americans' intelligence.
Well, that means that you and I are both included in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Are we getting dumber? Are we believing stupid shit?
Dumb phones should be the better name.
Would you get rid of them?
I stopped.
Like if you had a choice?
I stopped using Facebook after the Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2016.
Oh, yeah. That was Britain did that for Brexit, didn't they?
And Steve Bannon was using it and helped harvest a lot of data for the Trump's campaign.
But weren't they looking for? Well, now they just do it every day.
Yep. And now it's just.
But now everybody's doing it.
Exactly. Yep. So like the tracking, that.
Does that bother you? It bothers the shit out of me.
Yep. So I try to turn off all my tracking. I try to, try to leave a little digital blueprint as I can. But like, I have a Google account, like I can't like.
We can't escape the machine, Frankie.
I mean, I can because like I've done like but it's whether or not you want to put up with all the other difficulties, like so there's the trade-off of like convenience for security, and so much have like we as Americans have given up, security for convenience, with the Patriot Act,
that should have never passed.
Yeah, like. Time and time again, Americans will.
That's surveillance, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And oppression, the Patriot Act. Because if they can go at you for what was it? Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Like they can find you for anything.
Yeah,
and you're only supposed to get in trouble.
Especially these days.
It's everybody. You can't escape. We're in a prison. It's like a prison. Alex Jones said it, Prison Planet. You want to do it? You want to do it? You want to have a little bit?
Take a little sip.
Okay. Do you want the glass with the bullet in it, or do you want the live free or die?
Give me the bullet.
Okay. Yeah. Join or die.
Join or die.
That's the join or die.
Give me the bullet.
Okay. A little bit,
That's pretty, yeah, just the taste.
like a quarter of an ounce.
It sounds good.
Okay. See, man, it's kind of like breaking bread. You having fun?
Yeah.
Is that enough for?
No, that's perfect.
Okay, so I'll try to do the same.
Beautiful.
Good. Okay, we're gonna cheers on this.
We still got water in here?
Huh? Dan will run out and get water. Did you drink all your tea?
No, I want to water. You're supposed to water your whiskey down.
No, you just slam it.
No, you're supposed to water it down.
What? No.
To get the taste. That's why you've got to put ice in your
Do you want me
whiskey.
to dump? You want me to dump a little bit of Yeti in there?
Yeah.
Is there water back there?
No.
No.
All right.
That will be fine.
It's okay.
I have seltzer.
I'll show you how I used to drink. To being friends, man.
Good
Okay,
health.
you ready? All right. Opinion.
Surprisingly smooth.
Really? You want to read it?
Yeah, right? Let me see that.
Yeah.
I'll slide it over a little bit so you're not leaning stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
Keep
yeah.
the mic. Yeah.
This is Kentucky. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right across the street from Evans.
Bit
Use
of
the
a bite
same
at the
water.
end. Bit of a bite at the end, but no, it's really good.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's not bad. Okay.
I won't buy it, but
All right. So I want to hit you with Scranton City Council stuff, if that's okay. I don't want these to be too like, you know what I mean?
Well, you're running for council, correct?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Council handles a $70 million budget. It's $1 million budget, but smaller than the school district's 250. What's your number one focus? Roads, taxes, safety, or something else?
My number one focus is housing. As I mentioned, earlier, I got priced out of my home in Brooklyn. I got priced out of my home in Brooklyn, and I don't want anyone else to experience that. Our mayor likes to claim that Scranton is the most affordable housing market in the United States.
Is there data for that?
I have seen articles from
Yeah, but is there
publications.
data for it? It's you can claim anything.
It's like from like communities of like certain sizes that like have like a decent job market and yada yada yada. So like I have looked into it, and there are like methodologies that they do like go by for it.
Doesn't seem like it though, does it?
No, exactly, which is my point.
So somebody's trying to tell us something that ain't real.
Well, the sad part is that it might be real, and that like it's just so much worse everywhere else, and that like the situation that we're in may be better than other places, but that does not mean that it's good enough for where it should be.
So what is it? It's a marketing slip.
I think that's the reason that the mayor is like touting it as like a good place to move and like live in.
It's not great, but it's better than there.
It's better than everywhere else. Yes.
I don't know about everywhere else, but I wonder what the comparison is to.
It's like cities of like between like 50,000 and 100,000 people that have like unemployment under 5% or something like that.
I think our unemployment's higher than that.
Yeah, of course. The official unemployment numbers are like only people that are like officially on the unemployment rolls.
You keep going, because I might have actual numbers for that from the census.
Yeah, there's like U1, U2, U3. There's like different U numbers. And when you take a look at like the employment participation rate, that's something like 67% of
Okay.
the workforce.
The poverty rate in Scranton is 29%
Okay.
versus 12% statewide. 45.9 children under 18 live in poverty.
Yep.
50% home ownership rate versus 69% statewide.
Okay.
51% is the employment rate versus 60% statewide. So is this like a good place to be?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like a marketing.
So I have a plan. Like it's not just like, oh, I want to increase affordable housing, and we're gonna lower
Over
the
there,
rent.
over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So on my website, I've got a list of policies on my issues page.
I think Dan just pulled that up.
Yep. And if you go up to the menu,
Oh, there it is.
on the left side,
Is that playing on the screen, Dan?
It was. I'm going to go back to it in a second.
Okay.
and
Key issues.
and I've got just some highlights of some of the ideas that I want to present to our city. I think it's the
You want
second-
abortion on demand?
Yeah, I think abortion's
On demand.
Yep, I think it's a form of healthcare that, like, if we limit the use or regulate how and when abortions can be accessed, if someone has like a miscarriage and needs like a C-section, that can be considered an abortion. So, yeah, I think that the government shouldn't be saying like what is.
Wait,
isn't
wait. If you
medical
have
necessity.
if you have like a stillbirth baby and you have a C-section, that's considered an abortion.
Yep.
Well, I don't think we're talking about that. I
Well,
think we're talking about like.
But it's like legally like listed as such, so that I think that we need to.
It seems like somebody changed that name for some reason, or the meaning of that for some reason, instead of just being like stillbirth.
Well,
It's still tragic. And yeah.
But like we're seeing, across the country since the Dobbs decision in 22, that there are women dying in this country from not being able to access reproductive health care because it's labeled as an abortion, and that hospitals are afraid of getting sued.
So women are not.
Charged.
So women are not. All right, just explain it to me like I'm an idiot. So you're saying that because of the Dobbs decision, there are women across this country dying.
In hospital parking lots, yes, there are like reported cases.
Wouldn't that be like wouldn't those be huge stories?
Yeah, they have been. It's just that we live in bubbles,
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that have made like national news.
Like one or two, or
I remember, a handful of them, but as new crises emerge, we
It's like
kind of
every
forget
day.
exactly.
Every
We forget
day.
about the other ones, that are still happening. But yeah, I remember.
do you
seeing a
think
few of them at least.
abortion should be used as birth control?
No, I don't think it is for the most part. Like from like even speaking with women that have been on like Plan B, like that fucks up your hormones. Like you don't.
Yeah, you
wanna,
shouldn't take those things.
You don't want to be taking like abortion pills or
The morning after.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or like going for an abortion because like it fucks up your body. You feel sick for a few days. You're not quite yourself. Your
Well, and
hormone
like
levels
and
all
like
over the place.
yeah, your hormone levels get prepared for like a pregnancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the pills are basically like extra hormones.
So
And,
my side thinks that your side is like when Oprah gives away cars.
you get abortion, you get an abortion. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Is that the way it is?
No, I don't think so.
Well, how would you define it? Or how would you
I think they need to be accessible if they're necessary, and then if we put too many regulations on it, it's going to cause doctors and health providers to not be able to give them when there's life-threatening necessities. So like with like how the right wing thinks about it, of like late term abortions are happening all the time, and people are going.
I don't think it's happening all the time. I think the fact that people say it happens is, do you know, like, okay, so on your side, the tragic death of, let's say a woman stillbirth in a parking lot. That's tragic. I think a late term abortion is tragic too. I think on both sides, the parking lot one isn't happening as often, just as much as the late term abortions are happening. Does that make sense?
From my understanding, like late term or like third trimester abortions usually only happen as a medical necessity. And like when we're talking about before, like stillbirths, like those get counted into that number as late term abortions.
But there's no viable baby.
Right. But like if you have to like go in and perform surgery in order to like remove, from the mother, it is then like categorized as an abortion. So like that
Is that like kind of, is that like kind of like an HMOs?
So like, if you have like a rotting, yeah, exactly.
It's a code.
Probably.
Well,
that's probably
fucking
where
insane.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can't do anything about abortion in Scranton, so let's go on to your issues.
So yeah, if we're getting back to housing, that plan that I mentioned before, I really want to expand the Scranton Housing Authority. If you click that drop down arrow, I believe everyone.
The first one. Expand
The second
affordable.
one.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The first one also has to deal with housing, but that's for seniors and not wanting them to get pushed out of their homes.
Okay.
But for general people, the general population, I want to expand Scranton Housing Authority. You hear a lot of candidates talking about blight. I don't like to use the term blight specifically because that could mean a whole bunch of different things to a whole bunch of different people. That could be someone can't afford to get the siding on their house fixed, so someone might consider that blight. Or it could be that there's a condemned property that the out-of-state landlord basically just abandoned and it's been sitting there like that for 6 years.
Or it's not condemned and the out-of-state landlord doesn't do shit.
Exactly.
Okay.
All
blight.
So like people have different definitions. Like I wouldn't consider that first definition as blight.
Jesus.
I'm sorry about that. My hydraulics.
So I want to expand Scranton Housing Authority. I want us to be able to take over these properties as the city.
So how do you do that?
So there's two different programs that we can use. There's a conservatorship model, which is basically saying, okay, the city is taking over this abandoned property. It's been abandoned or whatever for X amount of time. There's like regulations around this. And we're going to take over the property and then sell it back to somebody at the end of the conservatorship. So you can like set up like a rent to own type model with this.
Are you also flipping houses?
As the city, yes.
So the city is now flipping houses.
Getting into, so only for conservatorships would they be flipped. That's like a requirement in the conservatorship model that is in the state law. Comes with another side. So like this is a revenue generating model, by like flipping the houses, by renting to own to residents.
So you're talking about properties that nobody are in?
Yes.
Yeah. Not like get out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then on the other hand, I want the other part of this to also be the city to start using eminent domain on some of these properties as well, so that the city will take control perpetually of these new properties.
Now, these are properties that are not attached to any person or entity.
I mean, if you're an out-of-state landlord, your house has been abandoned, you're not putting in any money to fix it up, and it's been sitting there for years, I think the city should, offer them a couple of $1,000s,
So you're not just trying to scoop up somebody's pizza place because you want that corner lot.
Exactly. So
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Well, that was tried. That was.
Oh, was it really?
I think it was. What's the one down the corner by Coney Island?
Bawana?
Yeah, I think that's it. They tried to eminent domain them at one point.
Oh, for the revitalization when.
Oh, maybe.
They redid that block.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right. So keep going. Eminent domain.
So yeah, I want the city to then use eminent domain on some of these properties as well. Some of these houses only need a couple $1,000s for fixed. It's a job program. We hire local contractors to flip up, to
Have you looked into how hard it is to be a contractor in the city of Scranton?
I've worked for a general contractor in the city of Scranton.
So many general contractors will not work in the city of Scranton because it's such a red tape
and everything.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
But, as the city, we might be able to,
You'd think you'd be able to do that.
Fees.
There's a lot of steps here, Frankie.
Because if we're building the property, I don't imagine that we're going to have to pull permits on the city's own properties. I'm not exactly
crazier
sure
shit
how
has
that
happened.
Works. Maybe it is, but
Yeah.
I imagine that the city's not going to have to pay for it. Otherwise, it's just going in a circle with that money.
Yes.
So, it's a jobs program by putting people to work, by revitalizing our communities. It's a way of the city directly competing with private landlords to help drive rent costs down, so it can help save renters' costs. It'll increase, like if you had one of these abandoned houses on your block and it is no longer an abandoned house but maintained by the city, your property value just went up. So it's good for renters, it's good for homeowners, it's good for workers, I think, and it increases city revenues. Because then the city is now collecting rent money. So, although we might not be making like huge profits off of this, we're able to then increase the revenue, which like there are other benefits too besides like just having profits off of it. And it increases our assets, which I think is important.
Well, I don't know if government should get into the real estate business.
So in Vienna,
Because they don't ever run it well.
So in Vienna,
Austria?
In the early 1900s, the socialists were in power before World War One, and they went on a huge building spree, and what they called Red Vienna. And to this day, 60% of the housing stock in Vienna is owned by the municipal government.
Well,
So it's not
did
like
the socialists stay there?
no. So like Hitler came in, took over Austria, all this. And
Oh,
all
wait,
that.
wait. But you said it was before World War One.
Before World War, yeah, and to this day,
No. You said Hitler came in. Oh, he got rid of it. Wait, there was
Hitler comes
socialists in
like,
Austria up until World War Two?
up until I think World War One. Like socialists.
Yeah, but then what
had a
happened?
huge part
Yeah, but then there's
of controlling stake in Austria.
See, when these things get like brought up, like the examples of like where they worked before.
I mean, no, to this day, 60% of Vienna's housing stock is owned by the municipal government.
So
From that
60%.
investment that they did
So-
110 years ago.
And what kind of homes are these?
All types, single family homes, apartment buildings. They have a wide variety of like housing stock.
And what's the quality of life there?
Great. It's
I
cheap.
have no bearing on this, so
Yep.
I don't know.
It's cheap. It's much cheaper than private landlords. And then because they own so much stock, even private landlords can't charge as high of a rent because the city, has such a control on the price of rents.
Okay, expand. So you want to move on?
Yeah. So alluding to the seniors, if we scroll
That's up
up
top.
a little bit,
Dan doesn't know how to work a mouse.
Nah, my mouse goes all the way back to the beginning when I do this.
Aborto a salakudwa.
So I don't want anyone to be pushed out of their homes. That's most vulnerable for folks are going to be our seniors who are living on fixed income. Inflation has been, absolutely terrible for all of us the last couple of years.
Well, also the tax increase from the county.
Yep, exactly.
And then the reassessment by the county.
But, so all of these bills are going up, grocery bills and everything. But folks on fixed income aren't getting, nearly as much in their checks to be able to support themselves with all the other increases.
Chris Schermack just told me that he ran into a woman who survives on like, I think $10,000 a year.
Yeah, I believe it.
It's everything.
I've done it.
Food.
I've done it.
Well, she's elderly.
Yeah.
She's like 66 or something, and she doesn't know what's going to happen if
Yeah.
they raise her property taxes.
Exactly. So something that I want to do, at least for our seniors above retirement age, is I think the city could still send the tax bill every year, but just get it deferred. So basically the bill won't become due until the house either gets sold or inherited.
So then what? Does the buyer owe the tax bill?
It comes off of the top of the
sale?
sale. So it would then be like a lien on the house.
So if you have like
for sale.
so if you have like 15 grand in property taxes or whatever, and this house is going to be sold for 100, you're going to buy it for 85.
You're
You're going to sell it for 100.
You're going to sell
but
it for
15 is
100.
going to go to the profit by
Right,
the seller.
It's kind of like when you buy a foreclosure too, isn't it? And if they have like a lien on them, you owe the back taxes on the home when you purchase that house.
Oh, okay.
Yep, exactly. So a similar program to that. I don't want to, kick out any of our elderly because they can't afford all the increases. I think this would offer a material benefit for them, which would be huge. The city will still get the revenue at the end of the day. It might be a couple of years down the line, but in the end, it all works out
their
to be,
money now.
but it becomes revenue neutral. So like we don't end up losing total money in the end. Like we're still able
So it's like
to
an
collect on
IOU.
them. Kind of.
Okay.
But on the house.
Right.
So,
on the property.
On the property.
Yeah.
So, if it gets sold because they move to Florida because they want to move to Florida, then we get the money out then. If they pass away and it gets inherited, then it, maybe we give
Now the family has to pay for grandma's bullshit.
well, a lot of times, a lot of folks will own their homes here and then their kids will own their own homes. And when the parents die, it's just an extra house. And a lot of the times they just want to sell it.
Often, yeah.
So this is a way of, giving, grandparents or parents, a tax break in the immediate term. And just, at the end of the day, they might get a little bit less money in the inheritance, but the parents, will live more comfortably for their final years.
I agree with the spirit of both of these. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Keep going. Keep going, motherfucker.
Something else on housing. It's not on here. I'd like to see a rent freeze.
For public housing or for everybody?
For housing. Yeah, I don't think that landlords should be able to
lose their mind.
Yeah, and let them come at me. I think that it should be
A rent freeze for how long?
Pegged to a percentage. So like you can only raise your rent like an X number amount every year. To keep it reasonable, to try to keep rents from exploding too high.
Well, can I ask you something? Like, why didn't that happen since COVID? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not like, I'm not doing like, this is literally like a 35,000 foot view question. Like if the party that would like agree with those things was in charge, why didn't they do that? Why didn't they figure out a way to do that so people wouldn't, because like as the inflation goes up, right? Wouldn't it be best to implement something like that for either federal public housing or state public housing or local public housing? And I don't think anybody did it.
You would think, right?
I don't think anybody did it. Across the country, I don't think anybody did it.
So let's circle back a little bit. Where did it all start? Was a question that I asked you, and you told me 63. I think,
I don't even know if you agree with me on that. I just said
the snowball has been rolling for a long time. But where I really think that like the inflection point is Citizens United in 2010.
That was a bad ruling.
By allowing basically unlimited funds to enter the political process.
Yeah.
I think that
corrupting it.
Hugely corrupted, the entire process where you can spend, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Super PACs and PACs.
Yep.
And yeah.
So, I think we should have, publicly financed elections. I think that it should be a matching system. So, up to
like candidate A gets 50 grand, candidate B gets 50.
If you raise $100,000, we will match you $100,000 for the first $100,000.
The fucking government?
Yeah. I think that the government should pay for elections and that there's a cap on how much a candidate should be able to spend, and that it should be matched by the government as well.
Do you remember hearing the guy, I think it was 2021, who, do you know what the Senate pro tempore is?
Mm-hmm.
In New Jersey. I think he spent $1,500 and he beat the Senate pro tempore in Jersey.
Nice.
Which just goes to show that you don't need money.
It depends on the race.
I mean, that's a Senate race. That's a state Senate race against the most powerful Senate leader in New Jersey, and this guy beat him.
And AOC, kicked out Joe Crowley in a primary too.
Well, she was cast.
I don't think so.
You never saw the documentary with her where she's like, oh, they did a casting call, and my brother put my name in, and I showed up, and they said I was the one? You never saw that? She said that.
No. Like, she was a member of the DSA before that. Like, I'm also a member of the DSA.
I know, but she said that on camera.
Like, I know how like the organizing happens. Like, I think that might have been like clipped out of context or something.
I swear to God, I watched the doc. They wanted to get rid of that guy, and the group went in there and they put out a casting call to like thousands of people. And AOC's brother put her name in. And she even says it. She goes, I didn't even know. He put my name in, and then I was the one chosen for.
I don't think it was a casting call. I think what you're talking about was nominations for like endorsements. So I think it was through Justice Democrats. I think the story was.
Maybe it was.
So her brother like put her name in to Justice Democrats as
to be a potential candidate,
as nominating her for like, I think that this person would be great as a candidate. And then like they look through like the information and then they reach back out to her. So I wouldn't say
Potato,
that's
patata.
casting.
Potato, patata.
Because like there are a whole bunch of organizations like that. You know, there's like Run for Something. There's a whole bunch of like local.
I don't think. See, but that's why. Remember how we were talking before about like outside influence?
So it's manufacturing consent. You know, it's like, does this person align with these values? And like, is this someone that like we're willing to invest our time, energy,
But
and
it's not.
resources
It's
in?
not the people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's outside forces manipulating an area. Like, I'm really big on like the area should control the area, right? Like your community, your town, whatever. And when outside forces come in, like it makes it not what it was. Like, imagine we're in Africa, right? There's all these tribes in Africa, whether you're in Zimbabwe or the Congo or whatever like that. Like, imagine just us going into there and being like, this is how I mean, not the United States government,
It's
but
not
just like
we haven't done that for
no, we've bombed
hundreds of
them.
years.
We've been terrible to them. But like, just imagine like that happening, and you think the African people are going to be like, oh, this is yeah, we're cool with this. We're cool with outsiders. They're not cool with it. We should never intervene in those countries. So why is it okay for people? And I just look at it as like a fractal thing moving down. Like, why should we allow? Like, if Frankie lives in Scranton, I want to hear from Frankie. I don't want to hear from the person who lives in Bethlehem. I don't want to hear from the person who lives in Altoona. I don't want to hear the person who lives in fucking Wilkes-Barre. I want to hear from Frankie who lives in Scranton. And I don't want to hear from any group that lives outside of Scranton, that is outside of Scranton, trying to manipulate something where we're supposed to be the ones making the decision. Does that make sense?
I think I'm understanding your perspective there. Yeah. Like, I think, those are like, for some part, valid concerns. I definitely hear you.
I never think they're honest intentions when they do that.
So I think that for the most part, we as humans want very similar
Why are you so afraid of the microphone?
My knees are pushing up against the top of the table. So
We'll stop being so tall. We'll get the chainsaw for the next one.
Under 6 feet only in here now.
Yeah, that's it.
Lost the thought.
It's about me having people coming in trying to tell us what to do. Yeah.
Yes. So by and large,
Not local control, local destiny.
By and large, I agree with you. We were talking before about co-ops, about how we both, think that co-ops are a good way of, organizing a local business. I definitely have like a penchant for more of local control than anything too. But I think that sometimes you need that higher degree of regulation to be able to prevent, not good things from happening.
But shouldn't we be able to police that? Shouldn't we, as our community?
But
do you know what I mean? Like, if somebody's gonna fuck around in our community, shouldn't be the ones like Roger.
Not all communities, have the same type of experiences, or
I agree.
Like education levels or like knowledge of information of like all of the materials that you need.
But like the basic things everybody knows. They know what a cat is. They know what a dog is.
Sure.
They know what's right, what's wrong. 2 + 2.
Yeah, but the like unique manufacturing processes that go into something,
What do you mean? Like building like arms over at General Dynamics?
Yeah.
But most communities don't have that.
No, exactly.
We have a really interesting dynamic here with our main export in this area is defense.
Yeah. Do you know what our main industry is?
I'm assuming bombs.
Healthcare.
Oh yeah.
Healthcare.
Yeah. They don't put an Arby's in the desert when nobody's there. They put it here when people are sick. Or they see people going to be sick soon enough.
I don't know. I like Arby's.
I like Arby's too. See, we could all agree on something around here.
The Reuben was good. The market fresh Reuben. I really liked that. Or no, the turkey one. The
I just like the OG
curly
roast
fries
beef.
are good. And the curly fries are good.
Yeah, I like the roast beef too.
Yeah. With some
Really like
horsey
the old
sauce.
school,
Yeah.
school. Man, I could go for that right now.
Roast beef?
I haven't had it in probably 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, now I'm thinking about it. I'll probably have throw a valve if I eat one, but
Yeah, it's not.
Maybe I'll take a
nearly
drive
as-
down after.
Yeah, it's like not nearly as good as like a good roast beef sandwich, but it's a good
Like cats?
I'm under no illusion of what I'm eating. It's not
Exactly.
a gourmet sandwich.
it's not like as good as cats.
Yeah. No.
All right, let me get to okay. This is a big concern of mine. The homeless camps.
Yes.
And there's a methadone clinic also right by a school over there.
The icebox.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How should council tackle this with more shelters, stricter rules, or a fresh approach?
I think 1 and 3.
Not stricter rules.
I don't think necessarily like enforcing stricter rules is going to be solving the issue. I don't shy away from the term radical. The word itself, root word, comes from Greek for the word root. So the root of radical is root, or like a radius. Where you come out from the circle, you're coming to the center of an issue. So I consider myself a radical. You know, I try to
But not
drill
like,
down.
not like a traditional, like,
Well, I try to drill down to the root or the center of an issue. So I don't run away from the term radical. I think we need radical change specifically, you know, in how we deal with our houseless communities. I spent a year and a half houseless, not full street homeless. Most of it, what it looked like was crashing at, you know, one friend's house 2 days a week, another friend's house 3 days a week so I can go to school, another friend's house 2 days a week, and like jumping between, you know, different friends' houses. But I think we need to take like a hugely empathetic approach to how we're dealing with this. We don't have enough day shelters in the city. We don't have enough night shelters in the city. We don't have enough beds overall. Our city used to house 200,000 people, and now we have less than 77,000 people. You know, by taking a fresh approach to how we handle public housing, you know, I think that we should be offering, you know, public housing to these folks. Maybe give them, you know, 8 months, a year and a half tops, because I think that's what research says, that it takes about that long of being in secured housing before you're really able to start getting back on your feet, you know, working full time, being able to provide, you know, cook for yourself and relearn all the skills necessary to reintegrate back into society after, you know, something traumatic for them.
is there a presumption that they can't cook?
It's not that they can't cook. It's that you start losing the habits, you know? So like habitually, you know, people will, you know, cook at the end of the day, cook their meal, you know, or we hope that people cook rather than are going out and buying fast food, you know, every night. But there's a presumption that like a functioning member of society is able to cook and feed themselves at the end of the day, at least, you know?
So obviously, you know, I've been involved in this a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had people reach out. Take your time.
So
Wrong pipe.
yeah,
I wish I got that on camera. That was the first we've ever had. That was our first spit take.
Yeah, it's all over me.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Frank. COVID!
Shut it down.
Shut it down.
What do we get out of here?
You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
That's
about that.
It's the green tea, man. It'll get to you. You might need to have a couple more coughs before you're okay. It seems like.
No, I'm all right.
So I had people reach out to me. Let's call them whistleblowers. Let's call them people like that. At what step in the process, like if you're a homeless person, if you're a homeless individual and they're trying to get you housing, and probably like a job and, you know, a sense of self-worth and all that shit. At what point along the process do you think that they tackle the mental health of that individual?
So it needs to.
You can get closer to the microphone you just spit on.
Yep, sorry. Don't want it to bounce back off of me.
I gave myself COVID.
I prescribe, from my understanding, from looking at research, housing first is the policy that works best. When I agree 100% that, you know, even from my own experience, you know, being houseless causes a lot of stress on you.
Totally.
And that stress
Totally.
develops into like, you know, mental deficiencies, you know, through one way or another.
Trauma.
Well, trauma is, you know, the short term, you know, difficulty that you're going through.
Yeah, but it's traumatic.
Yes.
Okay, so the thought that it's in your head will still continue to be trauma. I know it's like a semantics argument, but I look at a lot of things, like a lot of people's behaviors as a trauma. Like,
or stemming from trauma, at least.
Stemming from trauma. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
and that could facilitate new traumas in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
But like, I just try to, be clear, because trauma is technically supposed to be short term. Like we don't have a word for, like, besides like shit life syndrome, for like that constant stress that people experience. That, houseless folks are.
I keep calling, I thought there was a word. I keep calling it trauma.
Yeah, but trauma is only supposed to be short term. Trauma is supposed to be something that you can move on from.
And that's okay. So that brings me to an amazing point, which is that most of the individuals that I talk to that are homeless, and most of the stories that I'm told from people who interact with the homeless. There's a lot of great volunteers. There's a lot of really well-intentioned groups around here. Every one of the stories, 99% of the stories, have something traumatic in it.
Yep.
Right. And I think that is like the root of, it might not be like, my dad said something to me, and I'm not trying to make like some crazy traumatic thing, but like my dad might have said something to me when I was 12 that he didn't mean the way that he meant, and I'm still thinking about it when I'm 32. Yep. That traumatized me. I don't understand it. I never made my peace with it. Mm-hmm. I allowed it to define me instead of learn something from it. Right. Yep. So I found that a lot of people have like, what would it be? It would be unfaced trauma.
Right.
And the problem is that no matter what happens from that moment, whether you want to get housing or food or whatever, you might not agree with me. Unless you focus on helping that person
move past that trauma.
What did I learn from this? Instead of like, this defines me. I've met people down there who have had awful, terrible things happen to them.
Yep.
And part of me is like, I can't blame you for that. But I've also seen people who are like, I've also met people who like something traumatic happened to them and they're like, yeah, it's terrible what happened to me, but I'm not going to let it define me. Yeah. I don't know what that is in a person to make the choice. Like some people just choose like, yeah, that's terrible and that's not going to define me. And other people are like, I am here because of X.
Yeah.
And one more thing on the getting them into the system to help them. Mental health is like step number 4, which
definitely up there.
A lot of them can't be in a home because they have that trauma or that mental illness that they haven't been able to deal with. So it's like this futile effort.
Right. So
which creates more trauma. It creates more human suffering. You give them like a lifeline and then all of a sudden you're like, I've had homeless people tell me, yeah, they gave me a house knowing full fucking well. They gave me an apartment knowing full fucking well I couldn't handle an apartment.
Exactly. So like the first step should be like some sort of like assisted living facility for like, the first 18 months.
A lot of them don't like people telling them what to do either though.
Yep. So like, not all of the, it's not going to be like a one size fit all solution, like different people will have to like approach, certain vectors of this in different ways at different points, For some people, it might be step 4 for mental health. But for some people, it might be higher up. It might be step 2. But from my understanding, the first thing that you need to do is get a roof over their heads. Some people are better with a little bit more of an independent assisting, living. And some people need a little bit more of assisted living situations. And it, depends on the person, depends on the trauma that they went through, depends on the reason that they were out on the street in the first place, how long they've been out on the street.
The trauma thing is that I was talking to, and they said somebody said to me, somebody who's homeless, they were like, like if your hamster dies, like that's traumatic for you. That's terrible for you. Right. But if my kid dies, like that's terrible for me. And they said, but that doesn't mean that like on the severity level that those hurt less. Okay. Do you know what I mean? So like when people try to like, well, your dad punched you in the eye when you were 9 and your dad threw you down a flight of stairs and my dad threw me off of an airplane, when they start to compare traumas, they told me they're like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like what hurts you hurts me.
Yes.
You can't quantify it.
Yeah.
And I don't think they focus on that. I don't think the people who are trying to help, I think they're trying to say, well, his trauma is worse than her trauma, so we're going to focus on him first and not work. But it's like she's closer to being a success than that. It's almost like a triage.
Yes, exactly.
And they're not doing it. And everybody's fighting the same trough to get money.
So if we jump back to the website,
boom, boom, boom. Let me hear you say wayo.
Scroll down one more. I think it's the next policy. Expanding crisis intervention services.
Well, that's why I brought it up, because I saw that.
So a bunch of cities from around the country will have a crisis intervention team. And what this looks like, I think, in the best examples of, is you call 911, you're having a mental health episode, something's going wrong, that you don't need an armed officer to show up at your door, basically. Nonviolent occurrence is happening. You call 911, and the dispatcher sends social workers over to your house instead of armed police officers. A lot of mental health crises, police officers aren't trained to deal with. Why are we asking them to deal with these? We're taking them away from doing their trained duties of protecting and serving the community. So it takes away from police resources when we can be using them on more important things. A lot of folks, people of color, will often be afraid of calling 911 if they think there's an issue, because of how they perceive a reaction might be from the police officer. So this will increase safety in our community by allowing people to feel more safe by calling 911. In Eugene and Springfield, Oregon, our mayor's hometown.
She's from two towns?
Well, they're bordering. I forget if she's in Eugene or Springfield, but there's an organization that operates out of there called Cahoots. Since 1972.
I don't mean to laugh at that.
Yeah, it's a funny name.
Yeah.
But they basically do this. Where they've been doing this since 1972. In 2019, they had 24,000 calls that they responded to, and only required armed backup 150 times. So
in 40 years?
In 1 year.
Oh.
24,000 responses and 150 times required armed backup.
Okay.
So this is a program that our mayor is super familiar with, from her hometown. But when she instituted our social worker response team, she put it under the purview of the Scranton Police Department, where I would like to see this removed out from there so that, it's not 911 or the police officers calling in the social workers after they've responded to a call, but rather the other way around, that if a social worker needs, an armed police officer, then they call them as backup. So it kind of flips the script on that.
What happens when the social worker shows up to the situation and gets injured?
So that is a bigger fear in our heads than it is in reality. And so
well, can't the same be said about the police?
With what?
A lot of the times when they show up, I mean, is the fact that the police are going to do harm at a situation like that a bigger fear in our heads than just the social worker going to get harmed?
Sure, but if it's a fear in our heads that are preventing us from reaching out to the police department when they're supposed to be there to help us, then that is counterintuitive to the mission that it starts with. So if people aren't calling the cops because they're afraid of, or they're not calling 911 because they're afraid of their safety when they call 911, this can remove that barrier to make people feel more safe to interact with the local police department.
Explain to me a situation where if somebody's at a point where they feel like it's necessary to call something like 911, why would they not want someone to come there to protect them? Either from themselves or someone else.
Let me use another example of recently. Did you see in the news, there was this young kid that just got arrested for getting into a fight with his girlfriend while driving drunk, and then like yelling at his mom, and then police like told him to put his hands on the vehicle. He did, and then he like took his hands off the vehicle, and like he got arrested for assaulting a police officer.
I didn't see that. I thought you were talking about me.
No, that was just this week in Scranton Times.
Oh, that happened in Scranton?
Yep.
Okay.
That happened in Scranton. But while they were
When was
arresting,
this?
This was like this week.
Okay.
I was just reading this in the news this week.
So it must have happened last week.
Yep, maybe. One of the girlfriend, who had like called the cops had gotten in between, her boyfriend and the police, trying to get him to calm down so that like they didn't have to like tase him or whatever. So like a lot of times we'll call the police because, we might feel unsafe or something. And a lot of times we just need de-escalation. I don't think that if a social worker arrived at the scene there, that he would have been arrested at the end of it. And it didn't seem like the girlfriend wanted him arrested either from reading the news report, that she would, try to get in the way and like try to calm the boyfriend down, even though they had been fighting. He like ripped the door handle off of the car and it like scared them. So they called
The cops or the girlfriend?
the girlfriend or the
Is
mother.
he
I
fucking
forget who
super
called.
strong? How do you
I don't know how you rip a door handle up. Yeah, a car.
do that?
Wild. So like our police department does have like some extra like special crisis intervention training or whatever. I think it's like an 8-hour course that they do once a year or something like that.
Right.
It might be a 40-hour course that they have to do every so often. But that's a week of training. Which is better than a lot of other police departments. I will give them that granted, but I don't think that they are specialized in like a lot of these techniques that we should be sending social workers to instead for.
But don't you think that they have like the most experience in it because they're the ones that go to these calls? Like, don't you think that like the police department is like, okay, like we're the most, you can say whatever you want about like, here's how to de-escalate a situation. But in truth, I don't think most police officers want to harm anybody. I think they just want to, I think the most important thing for them is to go home at night and see their family
That's
and their
exactly
kids.
it. So they're trained to be extra safe for their own life. And that's
The police.
Yes. So they, will sometimes act, a little bit too quickly, in my opinion, to, pull out that firearm when they have it to try to keep themselves safe because, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. 99 times out of 100, they're probably sincerely fearing for their life in that instant.
Police officers.
Whether or not, when they're involved in a shooting, whether or not.
I'm just talking about like drunk Joe. I'm not talking about like, a gun situation. Because that's what
Right.
most of these situations are. If there's a gun, no fucking
I'm talking about
social
the
worker is
cop,
going to.
I'm talking about a cop pulling their gun. Cops pull their gun even when there isn't another firearm on the scene. And I'm saying that.
I'd be curious how often that happens around here.
So part of my organizing work with the Democratic Socialists of America, we are.
Wait. I asked this to Borthwick last week. Do you have a flag?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Tom didn't have a flag.
Yeah, I've got the SA flag. It's hanging above my mirror in my room.
Okay.
The other side of my room is all of my yard signs from all the campaigns that I've been a part of.
But you don't have Kim Jong-un.
No, I don't have Kim Jong-un, unfortunately.
Smoking a cigarette next to a nuclear submarine saying, Riv Rav Rav. He's very happy about doing that.
Hans Briggs.
Hans Briggs, piece of shit. Hans Briggs. Remember Team America? Do you ever see Team America?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Of course. Thank God.
Yeah. Finally, somebody in here.
South Park fan. He's coming out with a new.
Yo, isn't there supposed to be one with a Kendrick Lamar or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah.
That's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys are nuts. I
Yeah.
love them.
And together?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So, okay, I was mentioning about I don't think that happens that often. I don't know how often that happens. An officer has to pull his weapon around here.
In DSA, we are appealing a ruling from the Wilkes-Barre Police Department.
Okay.
Last fall, I want to say, probably around October, there was a fatal shooting, where an officer shot and killed a resident in Wilkes-Barre. So not in Scranton, but in our community, in our broader area. Pennsylvania State Police did an investigation, found that the officer committed, was in the safe, was in the clear for using their firearm at the time. And they say that it's on body cam. The big reason that they tout for body cams are transparency, so that when there is an incident like this,
You can check it.
you can check it. They're not letting us review the body cam. We're asking for it to be released to the public, and they declined it. First, because it was an open investigation. Now the investigation is closed, and they're still declining it. So
What's the reasoning?
So we've had 3 different judges recuse themselves from the process already.
Recuse.
Yeah, like step away.
Yeah.
And we just had to go in front of the president judge for the president judge to assign a judge for the case. So like every time that, a judge recuses himself, it has to like go back into a pool, and it's like another month until we get like an answer that the next judge recused himself. So it's just been like,
That seems suspicious.
is very suspicious, very, very suspicious. And I spoke to somebody who like said that they saw the body cam footage and it doesn't look good. So like, this is just a rumor, but let's squash these rumors. Let's bring it out. Let's show it to the public.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Exactly. So, a lot of my organizing is, fighting back against like RTKs. They're like, yeah, no, we said you can have this.
Do you believe in transparency in City Hall?
Absolutely.
So would you'd be for like open kimono? Here's as much as possible
Yeah.
for the public to see and make their own decision.
Yeah. Like whatever is like legally, like, I think like a lot of the like funny business that they do with like contracts and like, oh, we showed the contract during the live stream on the Zoom, so that's considered like open
Public disclosure.
Yeah, exactly.
It was on my wall, but did you see?
So I think we need to like actually like make these contracts and stuff public to be able to be audited by everyday folks.
Have you played with Scranton.ai yet?
Yes, I have.
What do you think of it?
It's interesting for sure.
Do you think it streamlines the process?
I definitely,
At least
like,
for the
asked-
information available?
I'm always skeptical when, checking any AI model, especially with like hallucinations, because like,
I didn't realize that was a thing until recently because they can do that.
yeah.
What's Scranton AI?
Somebody we know made a website, Scranton.ai. What it does is it takes all the publicly available information and makes it just like queryable, just like ChatGPT, just like Grok, any of those things. And it was made for efficiency and transparency for things such as the city council meetings or just average everyday citizens wanting to, like I looked up how many chickens can I own?
2.
And you and I talked about this, and you can't have a rooster.
Nope.
Yeah, but if you get more than 2 chickens, you have to now build a domicile for
is that
these
it?
chickens.
Okay.
coop?
Yeah. Well, you have to build it depending on how many chickens. You have to have a certain square footage and a certain square footage of your yard, and it was all like these arbitrary like weird things that like they wrote probably in like 1910.
Well, some of it might not be arbitrary. Like, I'm sure like so that the chickens.
Somebody has a small
welfare,
yard with
exactly.
Yeah. They don't have 80,000 chickens.
I was at the South Scranton Neighborhood Association meeting last night.
Oh, was that fun?
And yeah, it was okay. A big topic of discussion was apparently there's a property manager that is using a garage of one of the properties that they manage. So it's not like the owner of the property, it's not the tenants of the property, but it's the property manager.
Yeah.
And apparently they have like an unknown number of chickens in their garage that's like all boarded up. You can't see into it.
This is the black market now.
But the big issue that the neighbors are having is that there are roosters in there. So you can't have a rooster because of the noise that they make.
But you can't make chickens without.
Mm-hmm. So they're saying that no rooster. It's only for the eggs.
Yeah.
But
That's our JBL Bose system.
Yeah.
We play rooster noises to make the chickens lay eggs. What do you think? We're at like 2 hours right now. What do you think? Like what is your number one? What do you think? Are you optimistic about moving forward? Oh, let's talk about this right before we go. Was this anything like you expected?
So I've been a political organizer for the last few years, like working and helping people run campaigns. So I had a pretty good idea of like how to jump in, how to collect signatures that I needed. I had a good idea about the process. So I jumped in 2 weeks into a 3-week process of collecting 100 signatures. And I jumped in because I didn't like the candidates that I had to choose from for myself. I had a friend that was supposed to be running. They weren't able to for an employment reason. Another friend was going to be running, couldn't do for health reasons, that I was going to campaign manage for. So at the end of the period, I was like, you know what? I know what I'm doing. Might as well do it myself. So I jumped in, and it's been pretty good. I announced nearly 2 months after some of the candidates. So I was a lot of catch up. I'm doing good at fundraising. I've raised $2,000, which is...
You don't have to disclose that to me, just by the way.
No, I'm open. I've raised over $2,000. I haven't been focusing on fundraising, but I think that's a good amount for what I've needed to do so far. I know how to cut lists and knock on doors and talk with people, because that's what I did as a job for a few years. So I think the biggest issue that I'm going to have for this race is getting my name out there. I'm probably the candidate with the least name recognition. And that's because as an organizer, I wasn't out for like the clout or the prestige. Like I'm just fighting to try to make my community the best place as it could. And that I don't always think that I'm the best messenger for, the campaigns that I'm fighting for. So I try to uplift other voices. So you won't find my name attached to like a whole bunch of like quotes in the newspaper from when we were looking to end solitary confinement or other campaigns that I've run, because I want to uplift other folks. And here's the catch-22 of now I'm running for office and my name ID is so low. But it's doing well. I started knocking on doors last weekend. I'm going to be continuing and building that momentum up more and more until the primary.
What's the reception been like when you knock on doors?
I'm the youngest candidate running for city council. And it's, yeah.
How old is Sean?
That's a good question. I think I'm a year or two younger than Sean. But we're around the same age.
Okay.
Good point. But yeah, people look at me and, they're like, I already like what I'm seeing. I'm not politically connected. I didn't grow up here. I'm not part of the good old boys club, You and
I are talking about this. Do you notice it now?
Oh, yeah. Is
it surprising or is it?
I was invited to a good old Democratic rally yesterday. So that was a little
a Bohemian Grove. He was invited to Bohemian Grove.
Well, it was a police union hall.
Oh yeah. Do you have any stipulations for that stuff?
For what?
Like in other words, if the FOP wanted to donate to you or something like that, would you accept the money?
I probably wouldn't accept FOP money. No. It would probably be the only union that I wouldn't accept it from.
Is there a reason?
Yeah. I have I'm ideological driven. So everything that I'm, that I do, I'll either tell you I don't know, I don't have an opinion, or if I do have a reason, there's like a strong basis for it for the most part. And in that case, it's that I feel that cops are basically class traders.
Class traders.
Yeah. They get paid a wage.
Explain that to me like I'm an idiot.
So they get paid a wage like the rest of working people, but their primary function is the protection of capital. So
policy enforcers.
The protection of capital. So if you're maybe if you call the police department because something was stolen from you, you might get a response because you might know some folks down there. But if you have no connection to the local police department and you're reporting a robbery, tough shit getting anything of that, ever finding any of that stuff again.
Your property.
Yeah.
So when you say capital, right?
So capital is not only, so I would consider private property versus personal property as capital. So
isn't that both the same thing though?
No. So your toothbrush is your personal property. That is yours as an individual to, do with what you need. At a certain point, property can, have such a high value that it's then considered private property as opposed to personal property.
So this pen is not my private property.
It's private property if you're a writer and you're making like money with it as a means of production.
But if
it's just your pen that.
But isn't personal property private property?
No. Private property is
like my home, right? I own my home.
Right.
Is that private property?
Because you live in it.
But that's not private property?
It would be private property if it was then rented out to somebody else and used as a revenue generating. So like if it's
only private property can be used for revenue generation?
Private property is the property that is used in the reproduction of capital.
I don't think so.
Yes.
Like a car isn't private property?
Your car is private property if you're like an Uber or a Lyft driver.
So what you're saying is there's a distinction between private and personal property?
Yes.
I'm looking at it from I don't agree.
So when socialists say
I don't agree.
Like when socialists say that we want to like abolish private property, it's not that
you want to abolish revenue generating property.
So as a private corporation, the
can only corporations own private property?
No. Because like a capitalist can be an individual and own private property. The factory that a person owns is private property.
A capitalist can a socialist own private property?
I mean, theoretically, yeah, but you won't find them as often. But like, I have a buddy that's a socialist that like owns a house and like rents like apartments to a couple of people.
So as a socialist, differentiate personal and private
properties. Yes.
Okay, because I don't think
there's also public property, which is like another component of it.
Well, like public property is like parks and sidewalks and right?
Yeah, or the courthouse.
Sure.
But
so there's 3 classes of property then?
Yeah, personal.
Because I always thought it was personal or private.
And public.
Well, in public, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So wait, private property. What the fuck, Dan? Are you confused about this?
I just like watched you trying to put this puzzle together. It's good.
Well, am I wrong in my thinking?
No, public is public property.
I understand
it,
public property.
Public's the easy one.
It's basically property that's revenue generating, and if you focus on that part, I think that's the easiest way for you to figure it out. So if you have something and you can make money with that thing, then that is
private property.
Private property. But if you just have this pen, like he's saying, or whatever, this keyboard, because this shit doesn't make us any money, then this is personal.
See, but
So like if you own something, right, and with the IRS, so say you buy something for like a revenue generating business, right?
Yeah.
Then you're able to then write that off as private property as opposed to personal property because it's used in the revenue generating of your business. So like if you buy a keyboard because you need it.
Yeah, but what if I get a car to drive to the store to feed my kids? Is that not private property?
That's personal property. That's your personal.
Is there a distinction?
But if you're selling dinner to your kids, then that becomes.
Yeah, if you're driving Uber.
Am I getting fucked with here?
No. You're just an idiot.
Has this always been this way?
I don't know.
Are you making this? You don't.
I follow what he's saying.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know if
but I understand
before,
too. But you have never differentiated between personal and private property. You always thought it was private property.
Yeah,
it's always conflated.
Like
it's purpose. I think that it's purposely conflated to make it seem like these are two of the same thing.
I don't think I've ever differentiated between personal and private property.
Yeah, I thought if I own it, it's private
and it's personal.
I don't like you today.
Why?
Because you're fucking with me.
I'm not fucking with you. I understand what he's saying.
I understand what he's saying too. I just don't. I don't think there's a distinction. I don't think there's a distinction between personal and private. It's all private.
So if you own,
because that's the way it is in this country. The way it is, it's you're a private citizen or you're a public citizen. You're either an elected official or you're not. So and that's private. If you're a private citizen, you can have private property.
If you own a house and you live in the house.
The tax code's fucked. It's been fucked forever.
But if you own the house and you live in the house, you get a tax break on that house, right? If you own a house and you rent out the house to somebody else, then it's an asset. And it's then private as opposed to personal property because you're not living there.
Yeah, but that's the property of the entity, whether it's an LLC or me personally.
Right, it's the private property.
Yeah, but it's I don't see the distinction between personal and private. I think it's all private. Like I think it's all like anything like no one can come, like anything that you own is private. Like that, like land is private. I think homes are private. I think all that. If I wanted to buy a dump truck to go haul fill and dump fill, I think that's all private property. Like that's my private property. Like if somebody came and smashed it, I would call the cops and be like, "Oh, somebody destroyed my property."
Right, but we don't distinguish between when it's my property, when it's my private property, or when it's my personal property. So at least
this is like a who's on first.
A little bit, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, what's on second?
I don't know who's on third. All right, so for everyone who's stoned just listening to that, I don't know what that means. Okay, I want to end in a hopefully in a Hopi place. Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you.
Yeah, of course.
For coming here, and I hope that we're still buddies, even though I have private property. What's your Scranton happy place? It could be a bar, a park, a diner, just a place to like kick back and like maybe rally your crew with some friends, or just like your happy place where you're like, I don't have to worry about anything right now. I'm with good energy.
I'm always worrying about something.
I got to give you some of my medicine.
I think this place just has been living rent free in my head, and I've been stopping there at least like once a week. But there's a new restaurant in West Side on Luzerne Street where Roberta's used to be.
Where's Roberta's? On Luzerne Street?
On Luzerne Street, right next to Little Caesars.
Okay, yeah. I know exactly where that is.
It used to be a pizzeria, but now it's a Chinese food spot.
Is it like a buffet or?
No.
I'm
It's
listening.
like a standard Chinese food spot, but they have these specialty items, which is homemade Philly cheesesteak egg rolls.
Oh, you know who makes those too?
Oh.
Chef Vaughn makes those too.
Oh, where's that?
Chef Vaughn and Mom in the Square.
Oh, okay. I read an article about they like won an award recently. For
Oh
the best
my
chili
God!
or something like that.
No, he won an award for fried rice. He's been on
yes.
here a couple of times.
I've been meaning to go there.
Dude, the food.
They're right next to Frank's, right? Frank's.
Yeah.
Dude, the food. Holy shit, it's the best. It's the best, and I love everybody there. Everybody there is so awesome. Francine, Ryan, everybody.
You should go back and watch the show sometime. Maybe you have a chance.
Yeah, he got knuckled. He got so drunk. All right, well, we're gonna have to check that out. What's the name of the place?
Kajumbos.
Kajumbos. Man, you know all these weird words.
CAJUMBO.
Okay. May 20th is around the corner. What's the one thing voters need to know about Frankie before they vote?
I jumped in this race because I'm offering a vision. I'm offering a vision that others aren't necessarily doing. You hear about like people pointing to issues, but not necessarily to solutions. I want to offer bold, progressive plans for our city. I want to focus on the working class. I think that we've been left behind way too much in favor of large corporations and the ownership class. And I feel like, we need more, not more of the same. So I don't want a political dynasty, whether that is, the Clintons in the White House.
I think it's like Clinton's in City Hall. I'm like, no.
No, or, two McAndrews in City Hall, I don't.
I will say that they are very different people. I will say that. I understand what you're saying.
Illusion.
I understand what you're saying. But as somebody who knows both of them, they're neither one tells the other one what to do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like typical Irish family.
As the Irish would do.
As the Irish would do. But I agree with you on a lot of the stuff. I don't. First of all, did you have fun?
Yeah, it was a great time.
Do you think I was gonna Sam Beckett. Okay, thank God.
I told you could try.
I kept telling you, I was like, I'm not going to try. But I think it's important. I think it's important that, like, I'd be considered, to some people like a fascist Nazi, just because they don't know me, they don't talk to me, and I don't, and you'd probably hear stuff. Oh, he's a socialist. And it's like, well, why can't I talk to someone who identifies as that's what they believe in, and then strangely, there's probably a lot of overlap. By the way, I'm not a fascist. But there's a lot of overlap in like the ideas. And I think you and I had the conversation one time where I was like, we probably agree on the destination. We just don't agree on the journey and how to get there.
Yeah.
And I think
most people are like that.
Which I try to like, that's what people don't understand is like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to open up, take off the armor for a moment for both sides and sit and just realize like, we're all human beings on this rock and the infinite vast nothingness that no one understands, and it's only getting bigger. And we're fighting over what?
Scraps.
What?
Scraps. That's what we're fighting.
There's a lot of it. But like, I'd like to. I look, man. I'm the guy that's all ships rise with the tide. That's what I want. I want everybody to be happy, healthy, successful. I want the truth. I don't want anybody lying to anybody, especially politicians. I think there's a lot of hope coming soon. I know that a lot of your friends probably think this is like the end of the world, or a lot negatively. They look at it negatively. I would love to disabuse you of that opinion because I don't think that that's the way it is. Like, I've had more good feelings in my heart over the last like 5 years than I did in like the 30 before, which is something I know you're not going to agree with. I know you're going to think, but like, it's a strange feeling for me because I was a hardcore leftist. I was the guy who was arguing with Republicans about how good socialism is. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I'm right, but I kind of snuck away from that because I don't know. It just didn't end up in a place where I thought like, okay, this is good for everybody. I believe in individual liberty. I believe that you're responsible, to a large degree for your own successes or failures. And I also believe that there's a lot of people out there making money off of other people's misery. Yeah. And I think that that's terrible. And people like the places where we should align is like you and I being like, fuck those people who are making money off of other people's misery.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it like aligns with like working class like agenda. Like
I grew up in a steel factory, man.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's all I knew. All I know are guys who work their asses off, go to work at 6, huff fumes.
Yeah, but too many people are like proud of that. Are proud of like being in like such a shitty situation as opposed to like
it's the victimization. Does this define me, or what did I learn from it? And I don't look. The biggest thing I think that people can learn, and this is just my opinion, the biggest thing that people can learn is when something terrible happens. What did I learn from this? Because you will be stronger now. You will understand the thing that happened. You will be able to know that you can overcome it, whatever it was, and you'll be prepared for the next time.
I agree. And that's like my biggest criticism of the 12-step program.
I don't like it either.
Is that it puts you in the mindset of once an addict, always an addict.
A constant victimization.
Yeah. So
I stopped going because I thought it was culty.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I'm not responsible. Like, I can't overcome this. I'm always going to have like this fucking scarlet letter on my chest. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Although they did have coffee and cookies. Yeah. And they let you smoke sometimes.
Bump cigarettes. Yeah.
Yeah. Frankie, it was awesome sitting down with you, man.
Pleasure.
I mean that sincerely.
We'll do this again.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Win, lose, or draw, we should do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
And we should find a way to bring a little bit more love in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm for that. All right.
Thanks for having me, man.
Do you have a good time, Dan?
I did have a good time.
Did you?
I did. Yeah, it was a lot of
Fucking
fun.
with me about personal and private?
I wasn't fucking with you. I understood what he was saying. It's just you're not bright enough to vibe with us.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, you want to say it?
Yeah, I want to give a huge shout out to Kajumbo Wings. Located at 635
Yo, is that where you're going?
In Pennsylvania.
I love that place.
Yo,
I
those are
will
hot
be
wings?
going
Once a
there.
week.
Are those wait? They do wings and Chinese food. Those wings look pretty good.
I gotta change over the screen here so people can see the wings now.
Yeah,
So I
you
put up the map.
Man, you know what? Dan gets prepared for like these really awesome endings, and then he fucks it all
I
up.
did.
Then he fucks it all up.
It was great, but now everybody can see the wings. So 635 Luzerne Street. Go check them out. I'm gonna see them in about a half an hour. I'm gonna go make some of their private property my personal property. What a week. I chewed my pen the whole time.
Oh, that's awesome.
I hadn't done that in like years. I really, really enjoyed it.
Did it feel good?
Yeah, I like ate that little thing off the back.
That's beautiful.
All right,
got
I'm
that out.
gonna put that at the tail after the end credits.
What's that?
I chewed my pen.
I did chew my pen.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, my pleasure.